Welcome back to now taking a look at leadership in our community. Father Kevin Dillon speaks with Rollo about what a good leader is.
Well, and good morning in this Easter time on Good Morning Geelong, and just wanted to put before you today a couple of thoughts I've had during the course of this week. I listened to the Easter Monday broadcast of the footy match Western Bulldogs versus Richmond, and of course from about halfway through the game, when it was fairly clear that Richmond were going to get beaten, the name of the coach, of Terry Wallace, was mentioned time and time again, and again on the Tuesday morning Herald Sun indicated that time was running out and all of these things. We've seen it many times before, and we've seen some very successful coaches face the same sort of music as would seem to be being approached by Terry Wallace at the moment. I often wonder when these things come up just whether the role of the coach in terms of actually determining what happens once the players have run out on the ground is really overemphasised. And it's the same with it's the same in other areas of life. Parents can coach the children, but they can't live their lives for them. Superiors at work, bosses at work, can indicate what sort of work has to be done, what sort of standard they want to maintain, but it's not always that easy to ensure that each and every person working in an organisation is going to come up to the mark. And too often perhaps we sheet home responsibility to one person who can be doing not only their best, but their best might be pretty good, but in fact what the people that they're responsible for can be happening in government, a minister resigns and so on, and some underling that's done the wrong job, done the wrong thing along the way, but it's not very easy being at the top. Using the footy coach situation, I think it was Dennis Pagan, I heard comment after the game that he felt that, well, you could put a Mark Thompson in charge of the current bunch of Richmond footballers and he probably wouldn't do much better. Come to think of it, we've only got to go back just about exactly 2 years when there were a lot of people calling for Mark Thompson to leave Geelong. I think Geelong had lost won 2 games out of the first 5, and they got a drubbing at the hands of Hawthorn, I think it is from memory, in 2007. Came out the next week, beat Richmond by 150 points, and have really hardly stopped ever since. I think they've lost maybe 3 games since that time in April of 2007. So the coach can be a very handy whipping boy for when people aren't performing. In the long run, when you look at whether it's a football club or any number of other organisations, there are so many influences for good and for bad. In terms of a footy club, who does the recruiting, what sort of leadership is there among the players, what sort of team spirit is being generated by the committee, any number of different things that can come into play. We can all look for a whipping boy. We can always look for someone to take on and put all our aggression into and say, well, if they go, everything's going to change. Must admit, I'm not a total student of football, but I can't remember too many league teams that turned around simply because the coach changed. A lot of other things, the culture, the recruiting, all of those things had to change as well. And in terms of how we operate within the context of families and so on, yes, we can sheet things home to parents and so on, or teachers or schools, and all of these things have a role. But we need to be fairly careful before we zoom in on one person and one person only being responsible for the fact that things aren't totally up to our liking. I don't know whether Terry Wallace will survive at Richmond or not. I certainly wouldn't like to be in his position, and I don't think you would be either. But it is it does seem a bit tough when the person that can't play the game, whether the game is the game of life or whether it's the game at work or whether it's the game out on the footy field, when that person is held responsible for everything that actually happens out there done by others, well, it can be a pretty tough call. We need to be fairly careful in terms of what we demand of leadership in many different areas, because ultimately we need to attract good people to leadership. We make the ground too tough and not too many people will want to go in there. Similarly with principals at schools, people will criticise a school and they'll say this has got the wrong sort of culture and the students are misbehaving and so on. And while a principal can certainly do a lot for a school, they can't do everything. So we need to be just that little bit careful in terms of how much we target one individual for carrying all of the responsibility. Let's see what happens with Terry Wallace, but let's be careful in terms of our own areas of responsibility, knowing that, well, somehow or other, we might have to go out and do better. Good to be with you.
Thanks, Father Kevin. After the break, we'll be back with All in Sport. Stay around.